yet, and I hope you will not think all the time that I have to stop and shut up so you can eat. Anyhow, I don't think I have much to add to whatever you all know, but maybe it's interesting to know a bit more about the case of Albania and how history developed totally differently in our case, in a moment the world was the worst place possible for Jewish people. Acceptance of Jews and the protection afforded to them during the Second World War are only the latest episodes of the exemplary long convivence with Albanians in their homeland, which was seen as an additional homeland for the Jews in the 30s, and not many people are aware of it. And there is a fundamental component that unites the largest massive arrivals of Jews in Albania. They have not headed towards this calm port anytime, but only when they have been most at risk. As shown by the first Christianism historian, Flavius Joseph, in his book on Judaic wars, the earliest Jewish settlements were established in the south of Albania in the 1st century. 3,000 Jews that had been boarded on ships headed to the capital of Roman Empire as labor force, turned in the Adriatic and diverted to our shores, where Jewish toponyms such as Galilee, Phoenike, Jericho, Palesta is still present. They had built also the first synagogue in the Balkans in the 5th century in Saranda at our southern border with Greece, the same building as the Christian Basilica. When the wrath of Inquisition against Jews erupted in Spain and Portugal, thousands more of them came and settled in Albanian cities. According to renowned researchers such as Alain Dusselier and Bogumil Rabak, Sephardi or Sephardic Jews made up close to, if not the majority, of the population in Vlora, the city in the south of Albania, where now we are starting to build a Jewish museum during that century. During the centuries of Ottoman rule in Albania, Jews of all groups, such as Sephardic, Romaniot, Marano, came together. Even though it is known that the relations between these groups have not always been brotherly. And the great thing about the Jews, at least as we know, is that they are great when they have to fight someone, but they are not so good when they have to settle with each other, right? However, they were able to live among themselves and with Albanians in an excellent manner. This turned out to also be true when the 4th Jewish group risking eradication, the Ashkenazis, came to settle in Albania after the launching of the Final Solution Doctrine. In 1931, the government of Albania ordered a complete registration of the population. On this occasion, Jews were recognized their right to community, including Shabbat. This was a unique act in the Europe of the time, dominated already by anti-Semitism. Actually, it was the only case. While everywhere else they were being run out, Albania granted them by law ethnic and religious equality, same as all other communities in the country. It is considered to be the single case of positive discrimination for the Jews in those times. These situations of convivence encouraged the American ambassador to Tirana, Herman Bernstein, a central world figure of Zionism in the 30s, to propose an intergovernmental agreement between Albania and the United States for 500 Jewish families to be accepted to Albania. Missionaries of the Jewish World Congress also negotiated with the royal government, and they mandated a missionary, Leo Ilton, to visit Tirana and had talks with 2 Albanian ministers, agreeing with them for Albania to massively accept Jews at risk and for them to settle in free territories to create settlements similar to kibbutz. The report of missionary Leo Ilton was given to the first Hebrew University rector, Professor Judah Leib, 10 years later, where it rests to these days. A few facts coming from this incredible 50-page report speak of the same model history of mutual honor and solidarity between Albanians and Jews. As Jewish publicist Nir Hassan wrote a few years ago in the Haaretz Daily, Albania is considered in these documents, written by Leo Ilton, a second additional homeland for Jews. In the meantime, a part of the European opinion was in panic, fearing that Albania was being assimilated by Jews. All this was happening while the government in Albania was under the control of fascist Rome. This is what, I quote, a coded text of an Italian informer wrote for Italian Foreign Ministry in 1936. Without meaning to cause alarm, I must say that Albanian sympathies for us will soon expire, and our place will be taken by the Jews. In September 1943, when the former Nazi ambassador to Belgrade, Njoh Bayer, came to Tirana to meet the 4 representatives of the religious communities to accept the relative independence for relative neutrality formula, he promised everything on condition that 3 non-negotiable conditions be met. First, provision of a list of Jews. Second, deliver of the monetary gold, which was at that time in the Bank of Rome. And third, the delivery of the 2 Holy Gospels that are in Berat. The 4 negotiators, representing the 4 religious communities, categorically refused to start negotiations if the condition to hand over the Jewish list was not withdrawn. There is something that you should know. In Albanian first constitution, Albanian Code of Honor of Middle Age, is written a paragraph that has defined the history of Albanians for centuries to follow. The house of the Albanian belonged to God and the guest. And the real word, the true meaning of the word in Albanian is not exactly the guest in the sense of the one you invite, but is the one that knocks at your door. And basically, the one that knocks at your door because he needs help. Betraying the guest, this guest, in the Code of Honor of Albania is an ultimate crime, unforgivable. So these negotiators explained to the Nazis that if they would dare to accept, to give up the Jews, they would lose all followers in their temples. So they accepted to hand over the gold, but they did not accept to hand over the Jews. Nazis tried twice more, on 2 occasions, April 44 and even June 44, and it's according to also the Israel Pinkas Hakayot Encyclopedia, and they arrived in the conclusion that no agreement could be reached with Albanians on the Jews. In the spring of 1942, in accordance with the special Mitrovica status, which allowed the Nazi army to enter the so-called territory liberi in Kosovo, without authorization. And I'm bringing here just an episode of many that makes me feel sad about Spielberg, because if you would have known about Albania, he would have been much more successful in telling the story of Jews, although he's very successful, of course. But listen to this. An expedition of Reich Special Forces, this disgraceful battalion of hunting Jews that was settled in Belgrade, was assigned to arrest all Jewish men living in Pristina, the actual capital of Kosovo. The city hospital director was an Albanian from Albania, Dr. Spirolito, who in my knowledge is also righteous among nations, and his name is in Yad Vashem. He asked the patients to leave the hospitals, although with serious wounds, to go back home and free their beds. And he sheltered all Jewish men of the city. And in order to avoid any entry in the hospital, he surrounded the whole territorial hospital with a table, a plate, deadly virus, don't approach. But the interesting part of the story is that none of the patients were also in very bad conditions, some of them, and none of their family members didn't go to the Nazis to say someone crazy has thrown out my father or my grandfather or my brother, to empty the beds for these people you are searching for. So the Nazis came back with no Jew in their hand. The other part of the story is the incredible contribution of the Catholic Church. And you know very well that the Catholic Church was not very good with the Jews during the Second World War. But in Albania, the Archbishop was in person engaged to provide Jews false certificates of Christian identity for saving them. So the protection and saving of Jews became an inherent Albanian virtue. Of note is the case of 4 Jews, and this is another unique case in Europe, that were arrested. And there is a letter of exchange, guess what, between the Nazis and the collaborationist Albanian government, people that have been put there by the Nazis, which wrote to the Nazi command a request to free the Jews by paying a bail of 1,500 gold Napoleons for each of them. So this was shocking to the Nazis. But there is evidence documented that the collaborationist government insisted and finally freed these Jews by paying for them a bail. But it would be wrong to claim that no Jew died in Albania during the Holocaust. There were 17 of them, but they didn't die from being deported or being spied, but they died as anti-fascist participants in the liberation war and have been declared martyrs. Albania is the only country in the Balkans where the religious composition does not have a determining or a distinguishing role in regard to identity, where 4 religious communities already live together in what Pope Francis baptized when he visited not as a religious harmony, but as a religious fraternity. And a fifth community, the Jewish one, was not an issue at all. So I strongly believe that this is not simply a beautiful page of our history, but this is a very important treasure of our national heritage. And we need to not only tell it, but we need to make sure that the young generations understand it with their mind and with their soul as part of the core of being Albanian and of being proud to be Albanian. For us, it's absolutely important to be aligned in the fight against anti-Semitism, because anti-Semitism, as we understand it, is not just about the Jews. It's about the humans. Fighting anti-Semitism is not protecting the Jews or protecting Israel. It's protecting yourself, protecting your family, your kids, and protecting your right to be respected, being a Muslim in Paris, being a Christian in a Muslim country, or having whatever religion in whatever place that you may not be part of the majority. And as I was sharing with your founder and your gracious sponsor also, I strongly believe that the biggest danger we face when it comes to anti-Semitism is not from vandals, from them who go and vandalize Jewish cemetery, or them who go and vandalize a synagogue. This is something really shameful, but it's too shameful to be really dangerous. On the contrary, this exposes the barbaric side of a certain fringe. The biggest danger comes from them who look rational, from them who try to argue and to relativize anti-Semitism. I never felt as bad as I felt when I heard some purposes from the British Labour Party in a certain moment some years ago about anti-Semitism, that made me much more scared than to hear a news about a synagogue that was vandalized or a cemetery that was vandalized. Again, because relativism can bring us back in really bad places. Vandalism is there, is exposed, is clear, and is easy to define the dividing line. So I am no one to tell you more about anti-Semitism. You know everything. My great-grandmother was a Catholic. She never went to university, but believe me, she had a wisdom uncomparable with all the scientists I know in Albania. And she used to tell me when my parents were unhappy with me, I was a kid, not an easy one, by the way. You can't become Prime Minister of Albania if you were an easy kid. And I got upset with them, and she used to tell me, don't worry, keep calm. Parents are like this, and you are a boy, and boys become men, and men are by nature not perfect and perfectible creatures. So you'll make mistakes all your life because you're a man. But there is one thing
you should never forget. A man can afford to make mistakes, but cannot afford to be boring. So I hope I was not boring, and I'm very happy to tell you, if you want a beautiful place to have next conference, come to Albania next year. I promise you that you will not regret. You may not learn more than you know, but you'll not be bored. Thank you very much.
This is the standing ovation without us asking for standing ovation. So it says.
No, you didn't ask, but you kept me here. So what they would do?
There's a joke here in Israel about the difference between the English gentleman and the Jewish gentleman. So the English gentleman is coming and leaving without saying goodbye, and the Jewish one is saying goodbye but never leaving. So the same we do with the not boring speakers. So I think on behalf of Adam, we have elections here in a week time. And you have here like 150 people in the room. I guess most of them are going, except the ambassadors, are going to vote. And we have no clue what people will be voting for. And, probably you have 300 opinions. So, but we do have one thing that guides us, and which is Torah, our book. And also when we come to synagogues, there are a lot of arguments. But then you have one leader that has this thing, which is the Yad, and he follows the Torah. And then everybody suddenly becomes aligned with what is happening. So I think that Adam, on behalf of Adam, Valentina, who is on both sides, would like to give you this special present for a strong leadership. And once again, thank you for your country.
Thank you very much.